Hello, everybody. My name is Carrie Mitchell, and I'm from the English Collective of Prostitutes. I'm very glad to be introducing this event today with these wonderful women. Welcome. The ECP is a network of sex workers working both on the streets and indoors, and we campaign for decriminalisation and for safety. We have a national and an international network with sister organisations, the US Prostitutes Collective and Empower in Thailand. This event is to mark the International Day to End Violence Against Sex Workers. It's a day when we remember those who've lost their lives over the previous year. Sadly, the lists of these names leave out many people. We know, for example, partly as a result of the power of the Black Lives Matter movement, that women of colour, and specifically trans women of colour, are being murdered at horrifyingly high rates in many countries. We fight against being treated like criminals. Most sex workers are mothers, trying to do their best for their children. We campaign against poverty, which has been made so much worse by the pandemic. With the Global Women's Strike, we're campaigning for a care income for the work we do as mothers and primary carers, so we can leave prostitution if and when we want. We look back to the time of the Yorkshire Ripper, when 13 women lost their lives and 23 children were left without their mothers. With Women Against Rape, we picketed the Old Bailey during Sutcliffe's trial in protest against the utter contempt of the police and the establishment for sex workers and for working class women generally. It was that contempt that led to so many women being killed. Tragically, not much has changed. Violence and even murder are still high. Police abuse, sexism and racism is as bad, and poverty's got worse. Rape and domestic violence have de facto been decriminalised. Only 1.4% of reported rape results in a conviction. And 3 women a week are killed by partners or ex-partners. And tens of thousands of mothers are having their children taken from them by the state because they're poor or they report domestic violence. And we're still up against the same unjust laws. Even though it's legal to be a sex worker in the UK, it's illegal to work together. We're forced to choose between possible arrests through working with others and so keeping ourselves safe, and avoiding a criminal record by working alone, but putting ourselves in danger. This evening, we're going to hear first from a group of women from Hull who came together as Untold Story-voices to take their city council's no-prostitution, to take on their city council's no-prostitution zone. Then women from Mayfair, London, who work inside and had to take on their local authority against police raids and evictions. As we said in the publicity, for this event, it's different locations, but similar struggles. One of the women from Hull said when we were chatting that the government doesn't care about the woman who is searching her cupboards to find something to feed her child. That's right, they don't care. The billionaires who are enriching themselves through austerity in the pandemic don't care. But we care, and we are determined to end the poverty and all the other violence that women, especially mothers, face. One thing that has changed since the 1980s is that there is now a growing, visible international movement, often led by sex workers in countries of the global south, which we are part of and which is determined to win. Welcome again, everybody. We're now going to show the video, then women from Mayfair will speak, and after that there'll be a Q&A.
Hi, I'm Susie Winter. I'm part of a collaborative group called Untold Story /voices. We're a small group of like-minded, strong women who have had experience or been involved in street prostitution. And an Untold Story Voices is is a sort of follow-up group from a book we wrote, a book we collaborated with myself and another 11 women. We challenge people's opinions on street sex work. We wish to challenge authority on their approach to working with working girls on the street. And so far, this year, we've been quite successful actually in abolishing the section 222, which was a legal thing put in place to make these women into criminals, not victims, which is what they are really.
Hi, my name is Amanda Hales, and I'm part of a group from Hull called Untold Story-voices. In 2014, Hull City Council decided to clean up the streets. They didn't want working girls in the red light district. They described it as a prostitute-free zone. They did this by giving girls banning orders, and they could take them to court and they were fined or put in prison for a couple of weeks. We didn't think that was fair. We thought, well, to tell you the truth, we got really angry about it. We had meetings with Hull City Council, we had meetings with the police, and they just thought of us as an annoying little group making a lot of noise. So we continued and we continued to fight until in 2020, we decided that enough was enough. So many women had been given these banning orders, and their lives are hard enough as it is without getting a banning order from the area sometimes of where they live. I once got shown a banning order by one of the women, and it had the outside marked. And then she pointed to the middle and said, "But I live there." So she was literally banned from her own home. So 2020, we decided to take Hull City Council to court, and that's what we did. And we wanted to work with Hull City Council and the police, but they left us no other option. And the only option was court. So in 2020, in July, they finally withdrew the section 222. They had signposts down in the red light district saying that prostitution is illegal when it isn't. Their aim was to punish the women. And I think that life punishes them enough without being targeted, persecuted and prosecuted by Hull City Council. These banning orders were given out by the police. It might have been a civil court they went to, but they needed a barrister. They was up in front of a judge. They faced fines and they faced imprisonment. To me, this isn't civil, this is the law. It went against all national guidelines with working girls and vulnerable women. It literally stomped all over those guidelines and disregarded them. There was only 7 people who complained about street prostitution, yet this was brought into effect and it affected 70, 80 women. Hull City Council was literally in the paper every other week, patting themselves on the back for the number of section 222s that had been handed out to numerous women each month. They shouldn't have been patting themselves on the back. We asked them to look at different approaches and they ignored us. We asked them to look at it again, they ignored us. So to have to take them to court was really scary. I wasn't fighting for myself. I'm not at risk of getting a section 222. I escaped. But it just wasn't fair to the women working the streets today. And that's why we fought so hard.
Absence of evidence is a set of photographs in relation to things that myself and my other colleagues within the group decided to do with Henry Bragg, a photography company from down London. We wanted to do a collaborative art piece to highlight places where women have experienced extreme violence, if not loss of life. This picture is a picture of a lady's arm, a tattoo, because in the long and short haul of things and working as a street-based prostitute, you know, you do get judged a lot. Other people judge you. But as far as this person's concerned, there's only one Almighty who could judge this person. It was taken just outside the lady's home in Hull.
This one was this was a really renowned area. A lot of girls worked around this area, or I did myself, and it's just a doorway because that's where we used to stand. It's that simple, you know, just simple pictures that tell really complex stories. Yeah, this is one of the women I was talking about. This woman was murdered by her boyfriend because she didn't take enough money back. So this woman was killed through domestic violence, and it affected all of us, you know, who were working at the time, because it made us realise it's not just the punters who were dangerous. Again, this is just one of the areas in Hull. So many women worked around this area. We were literally a few feet away from each other. It was that packed. This is before it got moved to Hessel Road. This was more the town centre. That was the most prominent area of street prostitution in Hull at the time. And again, it's just where people stood, where women stood.
Oh yeah, that's at the back of Staples. It was a lady that had been a prostitute, a working lady for, I think, most of her life, at least since the late 70s. And I can't remember what year she got found in the skip, half alive, but she was very well known and lucky to be alive. And yeah, I think she'd done it most of her life.
Yeah, she had. I can remember this happened when I was working, you know, so like I said, that there was a lot of girls who died or nearly died. It was quite shocking. But if it weren't for one man who was skint, looking through a skip because he was skint, then she'd have died.
And she wouldn't have done it if she wasn't skint.
Yeah. This particular picture was taken around Great Thornton Street, Adelaide Street. The girls used to move round from what used to be Waterhouse Lane, the main stretch for working girls in Red Light Street, to Cambridge Street, more towards Hessel Road. There was a lady found in the bushes quite close to the high-rise flats. I think this is for sure why this picture was taken. And like it says, somebody found her there.
Yeah, it got classed as an accidental overdose, drug overdose. But the whole thing, there wasn't, it just didn't feel right.
No, I didn't think it was right. I think she'd been moved, but
yeah,
I don't think they always look into it like they would if it was not a working girl's death.
I think that's the point of everything, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, and in the local newspaper, the first thing they can put is prostitute.
Of course it is. It sells newspapers.
Yeah. Whereas if you worked in a cake shop. They won't put lady who worked in a cake shop found dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Again, this is taken in the red light district in Hull. Like I said before, we didn't want them stereotypical pictures of, you know, prostitutes in red shoes or prostitutes leaning in cars. That wasn't our aim. We just wanted to show the reality of where it happens, and it happens in every city. And that's what we wanted to show in these photographs. You know, every area's got a phone box or a doorway or a disused building. We wanted to show that this isn't just happening in Hull, this is happening all over.
Also, for the point of the picture, it looks like a cross, so may God bless all the women that we've lost along the way.
The quote at the bottom, I can remember I was working then, I was in a woman's house, and a neighbour 2 doors down had just been found murdered on Hesel Foreshore, and the social workers had to go and get her little boys. That was a really hard-hitting day, do you know, because it seemed to be one death after the next. She got killed by a punter. This is a photograph of where one girl was found. Again, another overdose. And I like this picture because it shows a little flower growing. You know, right amongst the weeds, there's a little flower growing. Yeah, this is graveyard, where a lot of women did business. A friend of ours who sadly has passed away now, she was attacked brutally in this graveyard.
Most street workers that get attacked don't even report it.
No.
Not even nowadays.
I've never reported anything.
No.
Didn't report it.
I don't think it's taken as it should be. I don't think it's dealt with as it should be. It's just dealt with like put to the bottom of the pile. Just another cold case.
I think it's also the stigma involved, you know, and then reliving it. It's all right reporting it to the police, but then when you've got to go into every single little detail,
yeah,
and to put it into words, you have to put it into your mind, and you're trying your hardest to stop all that pain, and so you don't want to keep telling your story. You don't want to go into such minute detail, and I you know, and then you tell your story, and then if it goes further, then you have to tell it again, and then if it goes to court, you have to tell it again. And then the stigma and well, it's what you do as a job. What do you expect? And I think this is really off-putting. But for me, I never reported being raped or sexually assaulted because I didn't want to form the words in my mind because that made them truly real, and I felt powerless. So I'd just rather use loads of drugs and push it down.
I don't know any street worker who's reported it and it has gone any further than that.
I often talked about working the streets. I felt like I was discarded by society, and I think that's true today as well. Do you know, these women have been discarded by society, or discarded like trash when their bodies have been dumped. And that's painful. Even now, that is still painful, you know, realising that my life worth was £20 and that I had a throwaway life.
So the collaboration artwork, we was going to put it in an art gallery where, you know, people like myself wouldn't go very often, wouldn't take family members. So because of COVID happened, we come up with the idea, like, it might be a great idea to put it out on the streets, i.e. billboards, bus stops, and a walking exhibition also. We decided that we'd do a silent 14 minutes silence to commemorate and remember all the women who either lost their lives or lost their, you know, long-time friends they've had through violence, through murder.
And people were coming round and looking at our pictures, and their silence joined our silence, and it becomes so powerful. The emotions of becoming a human wall, becoming a human gallery, it was really powerful because, like I said, we were telling our stories of girls who haven't survived and stories of girls who are surviving as well. That's a lot of girls, that's a lot of women, and the services are so flawed, so broken, that to get out of just one disadvantage is difficult, but when you've got multiple disadvantages, it can become impossible. And we wanted to show that there is hope. There is hope of escape, of literally exiting that world and into a brighter future.
Hi everyone, I'm Nikki from the ECP. I'm now just going to bring in one of the women from Mayfair. Okay, she's just checking her mic, I hope. I think you're on mute, so can you take yourself off mute?
Thank you.
Yes, lovely.
Hello, good evening to everybody. I'm going to read this statement from somebody called Felista, the lady that who cannot come today to speak to you herself because she is a mother and is worried about being identified. Quote, the first trouble we had that meant we got in touch with the ECP was when we got through a letter from Westminster Council saying that the premises were being used as a brothel, and it wasn't true. It was 2009. They said we will be sending enforcement officers. It had never happened before. The council was saying that they don't know that we were there. And one question we asked ourselves, how can they not know we are here when the Pride Street project comes to supply us with condoms? A second time, the police are the ones that came. I remember they were so horrible. We could see them through the CCTV kicking down the door. Can you imagine? At 2 p.m. in the afternoon, like we were doing something outrageous. You feel intimidated by people who are supposed to be on your side, but being so harsh. How can you feel they are on your side? The ECP helped us find a solicitor, and I remember we had to go somewhere in South London. We all went. I had my son in my buggy, and he was maybe 2 years of age. We had to gather our own evidence from the local shops that we had been there for 10 years. The council tried to pretend that they were concerned for our welfare. One letter said they came to have a look at to see if we were trafficked or forced into prostitution. But 7 officers came into the flat in bulletproof vests. It took months to fight them, but in the end, the council backed down, and we got a letter from the council saying, yes, you have permission to stay. You are a business. We have seen the evidence, and you have been here over 10 years, which was fantastic. One of the reasons it came up was because one chap in a club in Mayfair had been denied a license, and he complained and tried to get us kicked out. He was outraged, saying, how can the working girl be allowed to operate if he can't run his discotheque? I remember too the council put up billboards saying, in quotes, brothels operate in this area, and anyone visiting them may be contributing to organized crime, end of quote. How degrading and dangerous for us. We could have been targeted. They wanted us out because Shepherd's Market is probably one of the most expensive land in the country, I would imagine. Then some women letters saying they would be prosecuted. The police came in again. They were rude to Anna and questioned her in a forceful way. They were racist, calling her a gypsy. They took her fingerprints and gave her a letter to go to the police station. She has the right to be here. One woman, other women from Thailand were told to leave their own flat, and the police closed it and tore down notices that were in the hall on their way out. Together again, we complained to the police. Then the ECP wrote to the local councillors, and we went with women who work in the Soho to meet one woman in St. Anne's Church. She was quite supportive. There was also some sort of prominent lady there, a white lady from Westminster Council. And we tried to get the local MP to help, Mark Field, and he wouldn't. He just told us that he didn't meet constituents. In the end, we ended up closed down, and women didn't get deported. Meaning we didn't get closed down and no woman was deported. My impression of all the women that I worked with is that they are independent individuals and that they felt they wanted to support themselves and they want to be independent when it comes to the financial side of it. All my son's young life, I have had quite a lot of time with him because I could. My job let me. So now when I'm out, I don't feel guilty. He is aware that I have to work. All the women I know are supporting someone, either here or back in the country they come from. I describe myself as a woman of color, and there is a bit of racism in the sense that when the police see you as a woman of color, they want to analyze your status. That's what has been always the case. They really want to dig out much information more than it was a white woman. You are more likely to be interrogated more. True too of the migrant women. They treat you like a criminal. Just the other day, a man tried to rob me, actually. I started screaming, so he ran off. I went to tell the other girls, and I wanted to report to the women in Soho. the project in Waldo Street. But I asked them if they can take my report, then they can report it to the police because I don't want to get involved. They didn't even bother. My God, not even bother. I work alone by choice, but also I don't want to be accused of keeping a brothel or anything. I think the work we did actually brought us together because for many years we didn't know each other. I didn't know Kate, Rita. From then, we became much closer. Thank you. End of quote.
Hi everyone. I've been working in a flat in Mayfair now for almost 4 years. Everything was going good till beginning of this year, starting with COVID-19, of course, which has really affected the industry I'm working very badly. Since I started, this was very difficult to make money. Beginning with first lockdown, my problems turned into nightmare. I had agreed with the landlord that the rent will be reduced to the end of the lockdown. Because of the lockdown, I've been forced to be closed for 4 months and have no income at all. I was told by the letting agency to get government help, but when I asked for the documents I need, I was not given, and was just ignored. So I could not even apply.
Hi, Maria, you've cut out. Can you just check your connection? Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to move, let me just remove you. Okay, I think we've lost Maria for a second. We've lost Maria for a second, so let's go on to the Q&A, and if she comes back, hopefully she'll signal to me and she can finish what she was going to say in the discussion. Oh, hang on. She's come back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So where I was saying that I could not apply any benefits because I was refused documents from state agents. So it was very difficult to get every day to pay the rent or to do even grocery shopping. I did ask my family and friends to borrow some money from me to pay rent and get some groceries to pass every day. I had missed a few payments and I was told that I do not belong here and I do not have any rights to be in the flat, and please leave by the end of the week. This was I was told in June when was still on lockdown. But just before that, I was sent text that confirmed that I was renting the flat from state agents and I have taken over a tenancy from a previous.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you everyone who spoke, and thank you also to the women from Hull for that really fantastic audio compilation. We're getting a lot of very appreciative comments on our various forums about the photos and the whole presentation. My name is Nikki Adams from the English Collective of Prostitutes. As I mentioned, I was going to host the Q&A. I hope that Maria had finished. Anyway, you'll say, Maria, if you hadn't. Okay, so we have, for people that are watching on the various platforms, there's a link to a Google form where you can post your questions. We've got about 6 questions already, so I'm just going to work through some of those. For my participants in the Q&A, when you first speak, can you please introduce yourself? And I'm going to put us on a screen where I can see everybody's faces, and so you can wave at me if you'd like to answer the question. Okay, so the first question is that your book is the book, which I think there's the book from Untold Story Voices, from the Hull women. Your book is such an incredible thing to have made. Thank you. It shows your strength and also how much the state fails us. If you could continue, just checking that that's the one. I'm sorry, one second. It's difficult to see. Oh, there we go. Your book is such an incredible thing to have made. Thank you. It shows your strength and also how much the state fails us. If you could continue the project, what's next? Okay. Put myself on this thing, so format that I can take. So Amanda, lovely. 1 second, put you on. Yeah, and you're off. Go ahead, Amanda.
I'm Amanda Hales, and I'm from a group called Untold Story-voices. I think the book was just the first step. It wasn't until we was writing it that we realised that we had so many stories to tell, and if we continued, just constantly writing, we'd fill up book after book after book. So we started with a campaign book and the highlighting multiple disadvantages. So we just wanted people to look at our situation from a different perspective and a different viewpoint, and we've continued to do that. We haven't just wrote the book and then dropped off the face of the earth. We've continued to move forward, and the photographic exhibition is just an extension of the book, really. It's the same stories that we're telling, so we are continuing to get the word out there, get the message out that the government and local councils are really failing vulnerable women, and that's not acceptable. So we just continue to talk about that.
Hi,
Sorry.
for me personally, go on. For me personally, moving on from the book, I'd love to do a reprint, but with a few extra stories in there. And if we could do it for charity, I'd like the money to be used from the book to support these women more, to help them get out of prostitution. And moving forward, we're just going to carry on just doing our own little campaign, making allies, meeting people, and trying to get our heads together, to make this a better system for all working girls.
Thanks, Susie. Sorry, last time I was on mute as I was just reading out the other question. You know what it's like, mute and non-mute. Okay, so I think I'm on top of it now. The next question, which there's 2 that kind of are connected. The question is that in your fight against the no prostitution zone, who was on your side and who was against you? And then somebody else asks, was there something that in your journey, was there something that surprised you? Was there things that surprised you as you were working on this? But I think they're particularly asking about the fight against the no prostitution zone. I don't know if Amanda, I don't know if you want to say, Susie, and then Amanda could come back, and Emma and Anna. You're on mute, Susie.
Could you just repeat the question, please, Nikki?
Yes, it's in your fight against the no prostitution zone, who was on your side and who was against you? And then the question connected to that, which you can also answer if you want, is on your journey through all the fights that you've been doing, is there anything in particular that has surprised you?
Yeah, well, I think surprised us. I think it most surprising that there's actually a lot of people out there who want to change stigmas, want to change attitudes, and want to help these women escape prostitution. For the first question, I don't really have an answer at the moment. I don't know if you want to go to Amanda or...
But good. So does any of the other women from Hull want to answer the question of, in your fight against the no prostitution zone, who was on your side and who was against you? Is that you, Amanda, waving at me? I hope so.
Yeah, I just want to say at the beginning, it was a very lonely battle. You know, nobody else was speaking out. Nobody else was challenging the Section 222. So we supported each other, you know, within the group of an Untold Story Voices, and we grew strength and courage to actually start challenging this Section 222 because we couldn't see the sense in it. We couldn't understand why vulnerable women were being targeted like this. But as the journey continued, we did have opposition. You know, people did, you know, tell us to shush, but we just kept going and kept going. And it was through our determination, and then we gained support, you know, of other people, especially through the court case. You know, Public Law Project were absolutely incredible. Yourselves included, and Ugly Mugs and Lankelly Chase, all of these people, you know, supported us, and that enabled us again to draw strength from and to continue that fight, because taking a council to court is really frightening. You know, it's not something that any of us were comfortable with, but we felt the need. We had to do it. Somebody had to do it, and the only people who were willing to do that was us.
Can I just ask, as an extension of that, and maybe either Emma or Anna might like to answer, did it change your relationship with any local groups or local people? Did you kind of see people in a different light once you actually stepped forward and started this struggle? Did your relationships with people change? Anna, would you like to say something? You're on mute.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that surprised us was maybe our own strength and tenacity, and I'm not sure we realised we particularly had much, but we kind of learnt along the way. And in terms of what we learnt about other people, I think sometimes groups that we thought might naturally be on our side felt they had they didn't share the same agenda, and things that maybe we thought what felt to us like common sense turned out to be more of a political issue than we felt it needed to be. So yeah, some things were tricky. I guess some things we came into it quite naively. We didn't think that anyone would particularly have a problem with trying to improve the safety and for women who are at the most vulnerable end of things, and that it might be a problem that if anyone wanted to help make that a better situation. But we learned fairly early on that actually lots of things are problematic for sometimes, you know, political reasons or funding reasons or other things that were thankfully not an issue for us because we were just normal people.
Do you want to add anything, Emma? I mean, in some ways, it's a bit connected to the next question, which is what support have you had from political parties? People all want to know who's on your side and who's not. I know, I mean, Carrie may want to say something about the struggle for decriminalisation generally and where we've had support from political parties, but do any of the women from Hull want to speak about what support or not they've had from political parties for your particular struggle against the no prostitution zone, and also for change generally. Yeah, Susie is. So take yourself off mute, Susie, again. You're still on mute, babe. Yeah, that's it.
I'm
Yeah.
off mute now. Yeah, as far as political reasons go, you know, like Anna said, we're just normal human beings. So we started on a very low basis and building up. I do believe that it's getting a bit more political because we had to take the whole city council to court, you know. So I think the next step is actually addressing government as well. So as far as support and non-support, I think we're just going to carry on fighting to gain that support.
And what are you demanding from local politicians now?
We just want it to be the best case practice, not just for Hull, but for everywhere, really, for everywhere. You know, we're asking them to address things, see things from a lived experience voice person like myself and Amanda and other ladies, or, you know, are fighting to make things better for the working girls of today.
Okay. Carrie, did you want to say something about the political support, you know, for decriminalisation or opposition to decriminalisation that we're facing from political parties?
Yeah, yes. Well, I wondered whether any of the women wanted to mention Diana Johnson MP, who is not dissimilar to many women MPs, and yeah, including the Labour Party, who have been really a big piece of opposition. You know, they've taken a moral viewpoint against sex work instead of, you know, they're on 80,000 plus, you know, and, you know, women at the bottom don't have any money, and that's why we're doing it. And these women, who they call themselves feminists, and they're not only MPs, but some of them they're journalists and academics, and they take a moral viewpoint and they decide that all prostitution, they decide for themselves that all prostitution is violence, and that we don't even know that it's violence, which is an absolute outrage, because every woman knows, you know, when there's violence around, and what is, you know, what we're doing consensually and what we're not. There's been a massive movement for that. Anyway, maybe one of the women wants to say a little bit about Diana Johnson MP, who's a local MP in Hull, who has been outrageously, you know, did back in on the 9th, you know, did bring this 10-minute rule motion, basically trying to criminalise clients. You know, it's called the Nordic model, and it's where clients are criminalised, which makes, you know, drives everything even more underground and makes it more dangerous. But do you want to tell a little bit about your relationship with that MP, either Amanda or Susie? Because that's quite interesting.
We haven't actually got a relationship as yet, but we're hoping to meet Diana Johnson. Of course we are. We'll just have to see what, you know, the future brings. It is disappointing because, you know, the Nordic model, when you look at it on the surface, it looks like, you know, an ideal solution, but it's not until you dig deeper and look at the true evidence and listen to the voices of lived experience that you realise that it's not actually a solution, and in fact it's quite dangerous.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about that, because there's also the question of poverty. And we've been outraged, really, that the Labour Party women who should be fighting austerity cuts and acknowledging the fact that prostitution has increased massively because of the increase in poverty and because of the austerity cuts, which have particularly targeted women and targeted mothers. And instead of dealing with things like benefit sanctions and the low level of universal credit, and the fact that destitution in the UK has risen massively and prostitution has risen massively as a result, they're not dealing with that. They are instead interfering with one of the few ways that women have found to support themselves and feed their kids. And it's just like every day, it's shocking, the kind of news that's coming out about destitution. UNICEF has just launched an initiative against child hunger in the UK, an emergency initiative. And the idea that Labour women MPs are just sitting back, allowing that to happen, and then bringing in a measure that would increase criminalisation of sex work, I think is really shocking. I don't know if you, if there's anything, let me just put us all on thing. Is there anybody, did Emma, oh, Anna, good, hold on, let me just bring you out. Okay, go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about the sort of moral outrage is important, because I think it's all, prostitution is always seen through this moral lens, and it's not a moral issue. It is a health issue, it's a safety issue, it's an economic issue. The things that are moral issues are poverty and violence against women. Those are moral issues for any civilized society, and that's where the outrage should lie, and the kind of moral weight that's put behind this word prostitution just skewers the whole thing in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I think that's right. I noticed when I read your book, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring in Maria from Mayfair in a second, Maria, but just to address this issue of poverty, when I read your book and also saw many of your other interviews and have spoken to you since, of course, you do really focus on poverty and the impact of poverty and the impact of a lifetime of poverty. Is that something that is also a focus of your campaigning?
I think highlighting poverty is critical, because I think prostitution is driven by poverty. And then there's a trauma, and it's the multiple disadvantage, you know, domestic abuse, homelessness, coercion, exploitation, and it's all of these on top of each other, and it's that impact which again causes trauma. So if you're facing trauma constantly, and the poverty as well, you know, it just wears people down. And I think a lot of women feel trapped because they've got nowhere to turn. It shouldn't be about politics, but it is, and it shouldn't be about people with good ideas who are speaking for those who have no voice, when in fact those strong women do have a voice. You know, we have got a voice.
Yeah. I just Susie.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like 40 years ago, my mother, when I was 13 years of age, sat me down and told myself, my brother and my sister, that she got to go out and work on the street as a prostitute because the government wasn't giving her enough money to live on. And I did exactly the same thing 40 years later. Now, come on, politicians need to pull the finger out their ass. Serious.
Well put. I can see some people clapping there. I just wanted to ask Maria if she wanted to comment. Maria, you may not know actually, but because I think the lady that Lucille is speaking for was involved with this struggle. But one of the issues about the political parties supporting or not supporting came up in the struggle over closures and evictions in Mayfair as well. And I don't know if people heard, but Felicia's statement really kind of spelled that out. She said that we went to Mark Field, who was the Conservative MP at the time, and he wouldn't even speak to us. He basically said, no, I don't meet constituents. And that really shows you the arrogance and the ignorance really of politicians, that even though they're elected to represent their constituents, they don't even bother to have a occasion to meet with them. And that has been true. I mean, some of the duplicity and lies and bad treatment that you describe in relation to the people that you were dealing with when you were fighting the no prostitution zone in Hull is absolutely replicated in the struggle in Mayfair, because you wouldn't believe how two-faced Westminster Council was. And even the police in that area as well. At some point with the Soho raids, they had a whole forum where they were meeting with a variety of community organisations, supposedly working out policies on prostitution. And then at the very same time, there were mass raids against sex workers in Soho, 250 police coming in and breaking down doors and trying to evict the women from Mayfair. And at the same time, they're sitting around a table with all these organisations smiling and saying, oh, yes, we think that sex workers are victims and need protection. So some of the duplicity and double dealings that you've been dealing with, I think, are very common. Maria, I wondered if you wanted to say something about the situation of migrant sex workers in particular, because one of the questions is how can the movement really for migrants' rights work with and integrate and promote the issue of sex workers' rights. I don't know if you have anything to say about that as a migrant woman yourself.
No, I can't say just, we don't get a lot support, even not from police, because when I have my case, the landlord come with police just recently, that's last week, basically police was so arrogant. They want help, we want on our side, nothing, we're looking at us like nothing.
Yeah.
So we don't get really any support from them or anything because they're looking to us, because the industry I do as well, they're putting us down. And to get help is very difficult.
And who do you rely on for help? Is it other women in the sex industry?
Yes. You don't get a lot of help from government or something.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd just like to add about that is that a lot of migrant sex workers say that the situation's got a lot worse since Brexit as well, that the racism and the police abuse and the police sexism has actually got worse, and hostility from some members of the public has also got worse. Okay, somebody's asking where can they purchase your book? Is it available still? I know we got a copy, but that was early on.
We haven't got any copies left, unfortunately. They were all given away for free. But you can read it online. You can read it on our website if you've got something, a screen, some internet. And then we're hoping to do another print run, so there might be copies available after that in the next year, in 2021. That's something we hope to do. So,
Emma, do you want to just say who you are and how you got involved in Untold Story Voices?
Yeah, I'm Emma Crick, and I do mainly sort of admin stuff for the group. And I started off, the book, An Untold Story, was a research project originally, looking at listening to women's experiences about what got them into it on the street in Hull. And then that became a sort of a group, and quite a supportive group. And then it just took on a life of its own, and it moved from being a research project for someone else to being a book for the group, for the readers that they wanted to reach. So it sort of morphed really from one thing to another in the space of 4 years. And then we became our own independent group when the book was self-published in 2017.
Lovely. There's a question about what has changed over the years, and I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Carrie. I know you spoke about since the Yorkshire Ripper, but I don't know if you have, would like to speak about what, things that you think may have changed in terms of public opinion and that kind of thing.
Yes, definitely. Public opinion has changed extraordinarily. They used to refer to us in the press as Vice Girls, and they don't. I mean, I don't know if they did that in Hull, but they don't. We do a lot of press because we want to get the truth about sex worker situations out there. And we do feel that that's been very helpful because, for instance, if a radio program, they often do little surveys, of their listeners or whatever, and people do come back. People do really know now that the whole question of sex work they know much more that it's to do with money and poverty. And they also say that it should be decriminalized on the basis of safety, because you don't have any money, and then you have to make yourself vulnerable to violence in order to get some money. So on the basis of safety, people do agree that sex workers, women's safety, sex workers' safety, that it should be decriminalised. And in fact, going back to this MP Diana Johnson, this so-called feminist, who's only for some women, clearly, there has been a massive opposition to what she's trying to do, to criminalise cancer, which will make it more dangerous. And sex worker organisations and trade unionists, and other women's organisations and human rights organisations, in fact, did a whole briefed against and wrote to their MPs using a form that another sex worker organisation had organised to go around. So there was really a massive outcry, and people do know much more about what's going on now. It's just that the government is just really, well, as we know, they don't care what happens to us, and we can see that from everything that they do. And we just have to, as I say, we are part of the movement. This is just going to insist that this does change. But yeah, things have changed a lot, especially, as you say, Nikki, in terms of public opinion. And at a certain point, MPs have to take that into account. That is part of the movement. People who are for us are really part of the movement. To get rid of these laws.
That's great, thank you. Okay, I don't know if any of the women from Hull want to say about whether you've seen what changes you've seen since you started with this struggle, if you have anything to say about that. In public, you mentioned about the moralism, Anna. I don't know if you've seen that, local people, or if there's been any change in the local attitude. I don't know what the local attitude of your local paper is, for example, to you, whether they've been supportive, the media there.
No, the local paper is not supportive and puts a very bad slant on everything, pretty much, for copy. I think our support, that mainly where we felt most supported is nationally. Locally, it's been hard, but the people who've kind of had our backs, and the people where we've seen there's some kind of common ground, or people have a conversation based on facts and good practice, and that sort of stuff has all come more from a national level. So that does make things more difficult for us. I guess the changes we've seen locally have been more for ourselves, where we've understood we've understood a bit more what we're up against, but we've also understood that we do have strength and power as a collective, and we're not easily dismayed, and we're not alone. Hull can feel like a very alone place, but actually we have allies nationally, and that's been a change for us, and it's been grist to the mill, really. We've been able to carry on for this long because of it, and I think we going forward, we feel more we've got more traction, not less. We're more enthusiastic about what we can do, rather than exhausted by our experiences so far.
That's great. I love your expression, we're not easily dismayed. There's a question about fighting against the criminalisation of sex work. Somebody's saying, is that kind of campaign to end the criminalisation of sex work, it's sometimes presented as if it's only relevant or important to sex workers who are in a better situation, earning more money, able to work in more comfortable surroundings. And I don't know if any of the women want to comment on why you are pressing, why you campaigned for the end of the prostitution zone, which was criminalising so many women. I think you said 70 or 80 women, and whether you think it's just an issue for sex workers who may be in a better off situation. No. Okay. Go on then, Carrie.
Actually, I think it's, you know, moving forward and helping not just women that are in a bad situation, as a little collective, you know, being out speaking to the girls, you know, what can we do to improve the services for you? And first of all, moving the 222 so they could feel safe actually in a lighted area, spend a couple of quid just to go feed the kids. Or for whatever. It's not just for women that are in a better situation. You know, we're fighting for everybody. We're trying to get all the women, not just working girls as well, but women who are in multi-disadvantaged situations. We need to help them all.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's, I mean, because it's that the stigma, you know, that goes with the laws that really is really, really heavy on women who are working outdoors. You know, it's really heavy as, you know, you're up against the police and violence, you know, much more than women who work indoors, who also are, you know, can be, as the Mayfair women said, really up against, you know, having their doors bust down and whatnot. But no, we really start with the situation of women on the street, and the decriminalisation for every, you know, is removing consenting sex from the criminal law. It should never be anything to do with the criminal law. And if you decide, you know, that you're going to work in the sex industry, wherever and however we work, then, you know, if we decide we're going to have to do it, first of all, we want to get rid of those laws so that we can, at least if we have to work, then we can be able to do it more safely. But we must have that money in our hands. We must have that caring. We must have those benefits properly. We must have, you know, we must have proper money in our hands so that we don't have to, you know, we're not up against it all the time, and we're not forced into prostitution because of poverty. And that is the situation that women who are working on the street are up against all the time, the police and the violence. So no, absolutely, decriminalisation is absolutely vital for every way we work, you know, starting with women on the street, but for everybody, however we are working, because the police have so much power.
Thank you, Carrie. There's a question. Do you work with male sex workers? I don't know if anybody wants to. Were there any men in male sex workers working in Hull at the time then you were fighting the no prostitution zone?
We tend to speak for women because we are women. We haven't really engaged with male sex workers. We are a female collective, so no, we don't really know. It is there, but it's in a different area altogether.
Okay, good. Then P, somebody's asking about what kind of services are you pressing for? I wanted to just say something about the services, because it's true that we do want the services, but we also do, as Carrie say, want the money in our hands, because that's the way for us to stay in charge of what changes happen. You know, of course you want to have help from these various services, but the professionals can also end up working against you in our experience. And we fought some cases of where, for example, the social workers and the other professionals and the health workers have not only been not helpful, they've actually been hostile to women. And in one case recently even tried to suggest that a woman who was suffering domestic violence was actually at fault and putting her own child at risk. And the implication is that she was a bad mother. And we were really shocked and had to really kind of clamp down on that immediately to make sure that she got the help that she needed and wasn't threatened with having her child taken away. But I don't know if you've had thoughts in Hull, or if, Maria, you have anything to say about Mayfair, about what kind of services work and what don't work. I know that the other lady from Hull spoke about going to one of the local projects and not getting the help you needed, where you're trying to report violence because you're concerned that this violent man is going to get away with attacking other people. So you want women to be alerted, and she didn't get the help she needed in order to do that. I don't know if there's any comment about the services.
When I'd done a documentary with Channel 4 about breadline kids, you know, kids going hungry and stuff like that, But the people try to engage with me, social services, at the end of the day. But, you know, I knew my laws and I knew my rights. So I told her to get the fuck out of my house. You know, they shouldn't be invading women's lives like this unless the children are at risk. And for the majority, they are. They're trying to just look after the kids.
Hear, hear. Any other comments about that?
I think because the law says you know you're not allowed to solicit for sex, with it being the law, you shouldn't be doing that. So then the services say, you know, you shouldn't be doing that.
Just
so
tiny bit quietly so I can hear it. Yeah,
Lucille, can you go on mute, babe? Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I was just saying, you know, because it is criminalised and looked at from a legal angle, that the services, they don't work together, and that's, I think that's the fault of it. Or I'm not blaming the services for not working properly, because, you know, we know women's services throughout the country, you know, the budgets have been cut or the services have been cut. So we need to get those services working better together, you know, and take it from every angle, you know, deal with the poverty, deal with the mental health trauma, deal with trauma itself, you know, better benefits, better support around trauma and domestic abuse. All these services need to work better together, and then hopefully that will enable the women, if they want to escape street prostitution. And also we need better training for you know, a more trauma-informed approach. Hardly anybody's trained to recognise trauma, to understand trauma, and that is desperately needed. So more trauma-informed training, so services can look at it from a trauma-informed approach.
Thanks. There was one thing that I also wanted to ask you about that had come up in a previous discussion, which you mentioning about the trauma, Amanda, reminded me, was that you speak about drug use, but you speak about it a lot in relation to it being a symptom of trauma and unresolved trauma in your book, in the pictures and in the exhibition, and generally when you speak. And yet when you're interviewed, I noticed that people focused on the drug use without really acknowledging what you're saying about it being a symptom of, you know, being, well, deprivation and trauma and, you know, a hard life and having to deal with a lot of really serious problems. Do you, any of you want to comment on that? Go on, Amanda.
I don't mind commenting, but I first started taking prescription medication when I was a teenager. My mum was undiagnosed bipolar, and she used to say some really traumatic things to me, and it was a constant battle. And that's when I first used drugs to push down my emotions, and that just continued throughout my life. And I didn't have any support. I had no one to turn to, so I internalized all that trauma. And I just pushed it down. And if you keep pushing it down, it eventually makes you sick. And then I turned to street drugs because it was cheaper. And then I got stuck in that cycle. So for me, it was just a continuous cycle of pushing down trauma with drug use. And until that's understood, then people are just going to blame me for being a drug addict. You know, people need to understand the trauma that goes behind the use of the drugs in the first place, and often this goes back to childhood, and for a lot of women it goes back to childhood.
Sorry, I keep on thinking you're finished and was just putting you back, and then does anybody else want to comment on that? Emma?
No.
Sorry. Just from my experience of listening to people's experiences as well, something that just seems to be not understood at all is or acknowledged or seen, just the massively high proportion of women who've had children removed by social services and describe that as the worst, most traumatic, brutalizing, dehumanizing, misogynistic experience that they've ever had. So actually an example of where the system you know, at its worst, seriously reinforces that cycle as well. And then there's no responsibility taken for that. Just another way to sort of like tick a box, or like, we've done this. And sorry, yeah, it's just something that is rare. I feel like I haven't seen this acknowledged anywhere else. Like, you know, how many women who work on the street have their lives interrupted by social services in that way, and then the trauma, the brutalizing trauma. We've known women who've died out of that heartbreak, you know, from our group. And I wonder how many women there are out there who just can't speak because it's just too debilitating. But it's a massive part of the cycle.
I'm really glad you spoke about that, Emma, because I didn't know that was such a big part of your experience, but it is certainly part of our experience. We're based at the Crossroads Women's Centre with a coalition, with an organisation called the Support Not Separation Coalition, and they campaign against the forced separation of children from their mothers. And the horrific, you express it very well, I mean, the brutality and the injustice, and the way that the social workers and the judges and the fathers' organisations and CAFCAS all gang up on women, and the discrimination, the sexism and the disparaging of mothers is just horrifying. I mean, we always feel in the ECP, you know, there are women in that situation who've had have had their children taken from them. But when you listen to some of the other accounts from women, is just it is unbearable. And you describe women dying of heartbreak, and that's really what we see. But I think also the fact that Support Not Separation are fighting that, you really feel like that's life-saving work. And it's part of what we're all doing, in fact. I mean, we're fighting for our own lives, but for every woman's life and every person's life that against this kind of injustice. We have come to the end of our time. I'm just going to check. Oh, I think Carrie might have her hand up. Let me just check if there was another question. No, people are sending very lovely comments through. One person says the photos are very powerful. Thank you for sharing your story and important work, and applause for this victory. We relate to what you say about being discarded, and we shout, they can try to cut all the flowers, but they cannot stop the spring. And then they ask about what support you got, and about the views changing, and who is staying silent and who is not supporting you in this struggle. And they finish by saying, we are with you. I don't know who's that from, but that's a very lovely person that obviously wants to be in touch. And what are some of the best resources that panelists have for dealing with and processing trauma? We may not have time to finish that one in thing. I would say deal with women's poverty first of all, which is one of the most traumatizing and violent experiences that any of us face. Okay, so Carrie, did you have something? Yeah, go ahead. Wait, you're on mute. Yes,
it's just about people who do support, and going back to MPs, because it's I know it's most of our experience that they're not supporting sex workers, but there are exceptions, and one is that an MP called Lynn Brown, when Diana Johnson MP spoke in Parliament for criminalisation of clients, this MP Lynn Brown did a fantastic job opposing the motion that Diana Johnson was bringing. She made a really compelling speech, and you know, she and really describing what has happened in the countries where criminalisation of clients has come in. So that's really, really important that she as an MP has supported sex workers publicly, because that also is a big, you know, it's a message to other MPs, you know, including women MPs. They also have to support sex workers and how they can, and the way to do it. So we really hope that you know, we can work with Lynn Brown, and I'm sure that she will be, maybe she's on, you know, that she will, you know, we can make sure she knows. We will make sure that she knows about your story, you women in Hull, and you women in Mayfair, certainly. Okay.
Okay, we have run out of time. I have a couple of announcements. One is that our sister organisation, US Prostitutes Collective, has an event. You have to stay up very late for it. It's 12:30 tonight, 5 o'clock their time. They're on the west coast of the US, and they are doing an event that's highlighting in particular the work of the Black Coalition fighting back serial murders, who have been campaigning for justice for more than 200 women who have been killed and disappeared in South Central Los Angeles. I think, Carrie, you're still on. Can you just go on mute for a second? And I just got a message from the Support Not Separation Coalition, who are watching this event. And I think we can post the link to their blog and the contact details for that organization in our chat or on one of the forums where this is being live streamed. And yes, just to say that we are, the work that we were doing against violence, we work very closely with Women Against Rape, which is also based at the Crossroads Women's Centre from the time that Carrie was speaking about of the Yorkshire Ripper, but right through to the present day. And they're part of the Support Not Separation Coalition just because many women who face domestic violence, as I said, get blamed then for the violence that's inflicted on them. And that's used as an excuse to try and take their children. And that's definitely an injustice that we're determined to highlight. And just finally, I would urge people to go and look at the campaign for a care income. We're having to, everybody's looking now since the pandemic, and in particular at how much caring work goes on, done primarily by women, and how essential that is for the survival of life and also the planet, which are interconnected. And the care income would put money in women's hands in the way that is needed. It would be a step towards dealing with the horrific poverty which makes us vulnerable to violence. So that information will also be in the link. A link to that petition can also be in in the chat. So thank you very much to everybody who participated. Thank very much to my panelists. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom, and we look forward to the next event with you. Thank you.